The dorm door creaked open, and Jamie instantly regretted every life choice that had led him here. The room smelled like testosterone. Not a hint of gamer energy anywhere. No empty chip bags, no tangled wires, no light of a PC. Just perfection. And in the middle of it all stood a tall, shirtless alpha, mid-push-up. Sweat rolled down his back in slow motion, like a fitness ad. Jamie froze in the doorway, clutching his gaming keyboard like a weapon. Hi. The alpha paused, looked up, and wow. Piercing hazel eyes met his, sharp and assessing. His jawline could cut glass, and when he stood, stretching to his full height, Jamie realized this guy wasn't just tall. He was built. "You're the gamer roommate," the alpha said, voice deep. Jamie blinked. "I prefer the term digital athlete, actually." The alpha didn't even smirk. He just nodded, grabbed a towel, and wiped his neck. "Right, I'm Blake, your roommate." He said it like it was a warning. Jamie shuffled in, setting down his bags. Blake's side of the room looked like a military training zone, weights lined up, protein shakes stacked. "You're organized," Jamie said weakly. Blake glanced at his bag and set up. "You're not." That stung a little. "Hey, some people express creativity through chaos. Clean your side before it spreads to mine." Jamie frowned and muttered under his breath, "Yeah, sure, Dad." But Blake's sharp alpha hearing caught it. "What was that?" Jamie froze. "I said, bad. Yeah, my side looks bad." Blake narrowed his eyes before returning to his push-ups. The way his back flexed with each movement was distracting. Jamie tried not to stare. He unpacked his PC setup fast, anything to keep his eyes off that back. Blake finally stood, grabbing his water bottle. "You play those games all day?" Jamie shrugged, adjusting his headset. "Pretty much. Keeps me out of trouble." Blake smirked faintly, barely noticeable, but it was there. "Somehow I doubt that." Jamie looked up, caught that half smile, and felt his heart skip for a reason. "Well, I don't exactly cause trouble. I just attract it." "Don't attract it here," Blake said, crossing his arms. His forearms flexed just enough to make Jamie's brain short-circuit. "Got it," Jamie replied. "No trouble, no chaos, no fun. You're like a walking dorm policy." Blake raised an eyebrow. "And you're like a walking headache." Jamie snorted. "Wow, we're off to a great start." Blake turned toward the door, towel slung over his shoulder. "And don't touch my dumbbells." The door shut behind him, and Jamie finally exhaled. That night, while Blake was out running laps for fun, because apparently people do that, Jamie stayed up setting up his monitors. The fact that he was sitting in Blake's chair slipped out of his mind. So when the door opened and Blake's tall shadow filled the room, Jamie froze. "That's my chair," Blake said. Jamie blinked. "What? Oh, you mean this chair? The one that was sitting here, unattended, lonely?" Blake stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "Move." Jamie hesitated. His gamer pride refused to give in. "It's just a chair." Blake leaned down, voice low and dangerous. "Omega, I said, move." Jamie jumped up instantly, face hot. Okay. Geez, you're territorial." Blake sat down again, calm as ever. "Just remember your side." Jamie sat back at his desk, fuming, but secretly flustered. By week 2, the room looked like two different worlds smashed together. Jamie's side was a glowing battlefield of LED lights, ramen cups. His desk was home to 3 monitors, a mic, a half-empty energy drink, and a mousepad with stickers of Inosuke, a shirtless anime character. Blake's side, on the other hand, looked like an ad for discipline. Bed, perfectly made. Gym bag, folded. Water bottles lined up like soldiers. Not even a speck of dust dared to live there. Every morning, the same ritual played out. Blake would wake up at 6 in the morning. The sound of jump ropes and grunts filled the room like a gym soundtrack nobody asked for. Jamie, cocooned under his blanket, would groan, "Dude, can you not sound like a dying lawnmower before sunrise?" Blake, mid-push-up, would just grunt, "You could join me." Jamie peeked out from his blanket, hair sticking up, voice raspy. "Yeah, I could also jump off a cliff, but here we are." Blake just smirked and went back to working out. Later that day, Blake came back from class. Thankfully not shirtless, because apparently shirts were optional for him. And Jamie was deep in a gaming match, headset on, yelling into the mic. "No, don't go left, you stupid alpha, you blew our cover." Blake paused by the door, raising an eyebrow. "Who are you yelling at?" "My teammate," Jamie muttered, eyes glued to the screen. "He keeps rushing without backup." Blake grabbed a water bottle and took a long drink. "Sounds familiar." Jamie paused. "What's that supposed to mean?" Blake shrugged and took off his shirt. "You talk big, but you couldn't handle 5 minutes in the gym with me." Jamie smirked. Oh please, I can handle a full raid with 12 people shouting in my ear. I think I can handle you. Blake's eyes narrowed slightly, that smug alpha look flashing for a moment. Is that a challenge? Jamie rolled his eyes. If it gets you to wear a shirt for once, sure. Blake chuckled, low and dangerous. Careful what you wish for, Bunny. Jamie froze. Bunny, you bounce your leg every time you lose a game, Blake said. It's distracting. I do not. You're doing it right now. Jamie looked down, and yeah, his leg was bouncing uncontrollably. He slammed his knee against the desk. Ow, shut up. Blake's smirk deepened. You're cute when you're defensive. Jamie's jaw dropped. Excuse me? Nothing. Blake leaned back on his bed. Jamie turned back to his screen, but his face was on fire. The man was impossible. That night, Jamie was still gaming when Blake returned from the gym, towel slung over his shoulder. Jamie pretended not to notice, but his focus on the game was slipping fast. Still up? Blake asked, drying his hair. It's only midnight. Normal people sleep by now. Well, I'm not normal, Jamie shot back. I've noticed. Blake sat on his bed, scrolling his phone. He looked relaxed, but alert. Jamie couldn't stop glancing over, and every time he did, Blake caught him. Finally, Blake said it. You keep staring. Something you want to say, Bunny? Jamie froze. Stop calling me that. Why? You don't like it? I don't like being referred to as a pet. Blake tilted his head, voice low. Then stop acting like one. Jamie's controller nearly slipped out of his hand. You are annoying, yet you're still talking to me. Jamie huffed and went back to gaming, but his heart was pounding like crazy. Every teasing smirk, every glance, it was getting harder to tell if they were fighting or flirting. Oh. ... Every glance, it was getting harder to tell if they were fighting or flirting. When Blake turned off his lamp later that night, Jamie's monitors still glowed softly in the dark. Good night, Bunny, Blake murmured. Jamie didn't answer. He just whispered into his mic, yeah, I'm so screwed. On another day, Jamie had been gaming for hours, maybe days. He wasn't even sure anymore. The sun had gone down. The lights of his 3 monitors cast a neon glow across his face. And a pile of empty energy drink cans had formed a little fortress around his desk. He was one ranked match away from hitting diamond. One win. Just one. His fingers flew across the keyboard, eyes locked on the screen. He didn't even notice how dry his throat felt, how his stomach had been growling for hours. Blake had left earlier that morning, grumbling something about actual exercise. Now he was back, scrolling through his phone on his bed. He'd been watching Jamie out of the corner of his eye for the past hour. The kid hadn't moved except to yell at his teammates or gulp another sip of caffeine. Then Blake noticed something off. Jamie's breathing had gone shallow, his face pale in the glow of his monitor. Hey, Blake said, setting his phone aside. When's the last time you ate? Jamie didn't answer. His headset was on, and he was mid-battle, muttering to himself. Almost there, just one more. Blake's voice deepened. Jamie. 5 minutes. Blake stood up, crossed his arms, and waited. The match ended. Jamie groaned, pushed his chair back, and finally stood up, only for the world to tilt violently. His vision blurred, the room spun, and before he could take another step, his knees gave out. Jamie! Blake was across the room in an instant. He caught Jamie before he hit the ground, strong hands gripping his shoulders. The gamer's body was trembling, skin clammy, eyes half open in confusion. Whoa, hey, easy. Jamie blinked up at him, dazed. Huh? Did I win? Blake stared at him, jaw tight. You didn't even eat, did you? Jamie tried to laugh, but it came out weak. Guess I forgot. You guess? Blake growled softly, scooping him up as if he weighed nothing. Jamie's world spun again, but this time it was from being lifted effortlessly into Blake's arms. What? Hey, put me down, Jamie mumbled. Not happening. Blake carried him across the room, laying him down carefully on his own bed. Blake's bed, not Jamie's. Stay there, Blake ordered. Jamie blinked up at him, dazed and flushed. I can just stay there. The alpha's tone left no room for argument. He turned away, grabbed a water bottle, and returned with something from his drawer, a protein bar and a banana. Not exactly gourmet, but it was food. Blake crouched beside the bed. Eat. Jamie tried to sit up, but Blake pressed a firm hand to his shoulder. Slowly. Why are you acting like a mom right now? Jamie muttered between bites. Blake gave him a flat look. Because my roommate's an idiot who almost passed out on the floor because he forgot to eat. Jamie swallowed, glaring weakly. You're bossy when you're worried. Blake paused, then looked away. Someone has to make sure you don't die. For a while, neither spoke. Blake sat at the edge of the bed, watching Jamie eat like it was his full-time job. Every time Jamie tried to get up, Blake's hand came down gently on his arm. "Blake, I need to finish that match." "No, I was about to level up." "I said no, but..." Blake's eyes lifted, and Jamie swore the air shifted. "Touch that game, and I'll lock it away." Jamie blinked. "You wouldn't. Try me, bunny." Jamie groaned and flopped back against the pillow. "Fine. You're unbearable." Blake rolled his eyes and tugged the blanket up to his chin and brushed a few strands of hair off his forehead. "Sleep. I'll wake you when it's dinner." Jamie stared at him, the teasing fading into something softer. Jamie's voice dropped, barely above a whisper. "You're kind of nice for a scary alpha." Blake's lips twitched. "Don't spread that rumor." Jamie smiled faintly, eyes closing. Too late. He fell asleep before Blake could reply. Blake sat there for a while, watching the gentle rise and fall of his chest. He let out a slow breath and shook his head. "Idiot," he muttered softly. "You're gonna be the death of me." It was the next week. Jamie hadn't meant to start ignoring Blake. It just happened. After that whole week of teasing, being taken care of by Blake, and the stupid nickname Bunny that made his heart skip every single time, Jamie realized he was starting to like him. Like, which was a problem. Because Blake was an alpha. His roommate. His half-naked every morning gym-obsessed alpha roommate. Instead of facing that mess of feelings, he did what any emotionally confused gamer would do. He logged on. That's how he met Ryan. Ryan was funny, easygoing, and just as into gaming as he was. They played until 3 a.m. that first night, voice chatting about raids, pizza, and how college was a nightmare. And then Ryan said something that stuck in Jamie's head. "Hey, you're actually kinda cool to talk to, man. Wanna hang out sometime?" It was weird. Jamie never went out, but something in him said yes. Blake noticed immediately. For days, Jamie wasn't his usual loud, sarcastic self. No teasing, no eye rolls, just one-word answers. Blake would come back from class, drop his bag, and glance over. "Yo, Bunny, you eat yet?" "Yeah." "Where you heading?" "Out." "With who?" "With a friend." Every answer was short and distant. The more Jamie pulled back, the more Blake's jaw tightened. By Friday, Blake had had enough. Jamie was sitting on his bed, hoodie up, typing on his phone, smiling at something Ryan had sent. That smile did something to Blake. Something he didn't understand, but it burned hot under his skin. "Who's got you grinning like that?" Blake asked from across the room. Jamie didn't even look up. "No one." "Bullshit. It's just someone I met through gaming." Blake's voice dropped. "A guy?" "Yeah." "Why?" "Because you've been ignoring me all week," Blake said, standing up, the tension in his shoulders sharp. "And suddenly you're hanging out with some random guy." Jamie rolled his eyes. "You're not my dad, Blake." "I didn't say I was," Blake growled, stepping closer. "But you live here. You could at least tell me what's going on." "What's going on," Jamie said, standing too, "is that I don't have to explain who I talk to. You're acting like I cheated on you or something." Blake froze at that. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "Forget it," Blake muttered, and walked to his bed. The next day, the silence was unbearable. Blake barely looked at him, and Jamie told himself he didn't care. But he did. Too much. That night, around midnight, Jamie was back in his chair, headset on, laughing quietly as Ryan told a dumb joke through the mic. Blake was at his desk, pretending to read but glaring holes into the back of Jamie's head. When Jamie finally said, "Yeah, we should meet up again next week," Blake snapped his book shut. "Who's Ryan?" he asked flatly. Jamie sighed. "Seriously? Just answer the question." "He's a friend." Blake stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "You don't even go out with your classmates, but you go out with some guy you just met online?" Jamie turned around, arms crossed. "He's a gamer too. So we have things in common, and why do you even care?" Blake's voice was low now, the kind of low that made Jamie's pulse spike. "Because I do." Jamie's heart tripped. "You don't even like me half the time." Blake stepped closer. "That's not true." Jamie backed up. "Then what is true?" Blake looked down at him, eyes dark, breathing steady. "You drive me insane, Jamie." Before Jamie could respond, Blake reached for him, gripping his wrist, tugging him forward, and suddenly Jamie was off his chair and sitting on Blake's lap. Jamie's breath caught. "What the hell are you doing?" "Getting your attention," Blake murmured, his arm wrapping around Jamie's waist. Jamie froze. He could feel every muscle under him, the warmth, his alpha scent. "Let go," Jamie said weakly. "Say please." Jamie's stomach flipped. Never. Blake leaned in, voice brushing his ear. You're stuck sitting here then. Jamie couldn't move, his heartbeat thundered. And he hated how good it felt, how safe and dangerous at the same time. Jamie finally jumped off his lap with utmost strength. Why do you even care who I talk to? Jamie asked quietly, shuffling shyly to his own bed. Blake looked at his sudden empty thighs. He didn't answer the question, he just said, just stop running from me. Jamie looked away, laying down and pulling up his blanket, face burning. I wasn't running. Blake smiled faintly. Then why do I have to hold you still to get you to look at me? Jamie didn't answer. He couldn't. Because deep down, Blake was right. That night, Jamie lay in bed wide awake. Blake's words replayed in his head. And when he finally drifted off, his last thought was a quiet, terrifying truth. He liked his possessive alpha roommate. More than he should. It was days after that night, and Jamie had a plan. The plan was simple. One all-night gaming marathon in Ryan's dorm room. No drama. No overthinking. Just energy drinks, junk food, and leveling up. Jamie had packed his laptop and snacks. The whole time he was walking out the door, he could feel Blake's eyes on his back. You're really going out this late? Blake asked from his bed. Yeah, we're having a gaming night. Don't wait up, Jamie said quickly, grabbing his hoodie. Who's we? Ryan and me. Blake's jaw flexed. Right. Ryan. Jamie ignored the tone. He didn't owe Blake an explanation. The gaming night was fun. There was laughs, late-night pizza, caffeine overload, the usual chaos. But halfway through, Jamie kept checking his phone. No messages. He had expected at least one. When dawn started to break, he finally yawned and said, I should get back before my roommate freaks out. Ryan smirked. The alpha one? Jamie blinked. What? How'd you know? Ryan shrugged. You mentioned having a roommate. The way you described him sounded very alpha-like and complicated. Jamie rolled his eyes. But his ears went hot. It's not complicated. Sure, Ryan said, clearly not buying it. See you later. It was almost 6 a.m. when Jamie returned. The dorm was quiet, lights off. He opened the door slowly, expecting Blake to be asleep. He wasn't. Blake was sitting on the couch, hoodie half-zipped, elbows on his knees, eyes dark and fixed on the door. Jamie froze. You're up? Couldn't sleep. There was a roughness in Blake's voice that made Jamie's stomach twist. Jamie tried to sound casual. Did you wait for me? I didn't. Really? 'Cause you look like you've been waiting all night. Blake stood up slowly, stretching his neck. Well, I didn't. Jamie's lips curved. What? Worried Ryan was going to kidnap me? Depends, Blake said, stepping closer. What did you two do all night? Jamie blinked, taken off guard. We gamed, ate pizza. That's it. Blake took another step, voice lower now. You stay there all night just gaming? Yeah, Jamie said, heart thudding. Why? You don't believe me? Blake was right in front of him now, so close that Jamie could feel his breath. I believe you, he said quietly. I just don't like picturing you in some guy's room, especially not when you come back smelling like him. Jamie froze. What? Blake leaned in, nose brushing against Jamie's neck, inhaling softly. You smell like him. Jamie's pulse spiked. Blake. He didn't move. You've been ignoring me, laughing with some other guy, and now you waltz back in here like nothing's changed. Jamie's voice came out shaky. Nothing has changed. Then why does it feel like it has? Blake whispered. Jamie swallowed hard. You're being ridiculous. Maybe, Blake murmured, fingers brushing Jamie's hoodie zipper. But you drive me crazy, Bunny. His fingers slid under the fabric, warm against Jamie's skin. Jamie's breath hitched. Blake, I've stopped pretending like I don't care. Jamie stumbled back, but Blake's hand caught his wrist, pulling him forward again until their chests touched. Blake's eyes flicked down to his lips. Tell me to stop, he said. Jamie couldn't. The words were there, but buried under the pulse in his throat and the heat curling low in his stomach. Instead, he whispered, You shouldn't. Blake smirked faintly. That's not the same as stop. Jamie's fingers gripped the front of Blake's hoodie without realizing it. You're annoying. And you didn't say stop, Blake said, voice barely above a growl. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then Blake's thumb brushed Jamie's jaw, tilting his face up just enough for their eyes to lock. Next time you want to stay out all night, Blake whispered, you should keep me updated. Or, I might come looking for you. Jamie blinked, heat crawling up his neck. That's not how normal people work. Good thing I'm not normal. Jamie finally managed a small laugh, but it caught halfway through when Blake leaned closer. Go to bed, Blake said softly. stepping back just enough to let Jamie breathe. "Before I forget, you just got home." Jamie nodded, but his face was burning. As he climbed into bed, Blake turned off the light and climbed his own bed. They both woke up late, like really late. The sun was high, cutting through the blinds. Jamie groaned and buried his face in the pillow. "What time is it?" Blake's deep morning voice answered from across the room, low and groggy. "Almost 3. Jamie stretched, yawning. "Guess we overslept." Blake glanced over, half smiling. "You mean you overslept? I've been up for an hour." Jamie peered from under the blanket. "Doing what? Brooding?" "Planning," Blake said, standing up and pulling on his hoodie. Jamie squinted. "Planning what?" "Our workout." Jamie blinked. "Our what?" Blake looked back at him. "You've been glued to that gaming chair all week. You need to move, bunny." Jamie rolled his eyes. "I move plenty. My thumbs are very active." Blake crossed his arms. "Get up. You're coming to the gym with me." Jamie sat up slowly, hair a mess. "Absolutely not." "Yes." "No." "Yes, Blake. I swear if you drag me out." Blake smirked. "Then I'll carry you." Jamie froze. "You wouldn't." Blake raised a brow. "Try me." Jamie groaned, threw the blanket over his head, and mumbled, "You're the worst alpha alive." 10 minutes later, he was reluctantly following Blake down the hall, hoodie on, face buried in his phone. The gym smelled like metal, rubber, and testosterone. Machines clanked. People grunted. It was hell on earth for a gamer like Jamie. "Okay," Blake said, stretching easily. "We'll start light, warm up." Jamie stared at the treadmill. "This thing looks like it could kill me." "It won't," Blake said, amused. "Just walk. You know how to walk, right?" Jamie shot him a look. "Ha ha." He stepped on, pressed a random button, and instantly lurched forward. "Whoa, Blake, how do you stop this thing?" Blake reached over, grabbing the panel and hitting the speed down button. His arm holding Jamie's side, steadying him. "You're fine. Relax." Jamie blinked up at him, panting slightly. "Your idea of relaxing is terrifying," Blake chuckled. "You're doing fine, bunny." Jamie glared. "Stop calling me that, especially in public." Blake smirked. "Then stop looking so cute," he muttered under his breath. After the treadmill, Blake dragged him to the weight area. "All right," Blake said, grabbing a small barbell. "You're gonna try this." Jamie eyed the weights. "This looks heavy." "It's 5 kilos. It feels heavy." Blake sighed, stepping behind him. "Here, like this." He placed his hands on Jamie's arms, guiding his movement. Jamie stiffened slightly at the contact. Blake's chest was right behind him, body heat radiating through his hoodie. Blake's voice dropped unconsciously. "Breathe in when you lift." Jamie did, trying not to think about how close they were. "Good, now exhale slowly." Jamie did, but the soft, barely audible sound that came out of Blake was not planned. Jamie froze. "Did you just—" Blake's eyes widened. "No." Jamie turned his head, smirking. "You just moaned." "It was a groan, for lifting the weights." Just, focus noise," Blake stammered, ears turning red. Jamie grinned. "Focus noise. Really?" Blake looked away. "Don't make it weird." Jamie tilted his head teasingly. "Too late." Blake cleared his throat. "Next exercise." They moved to the pull-up bar next. Jamie stared at it blankly. "You actually expect me to pull myself up?" Blake nodded. "I'll help." Jamie grabbed the bar, legs dangling. "Okay, how do I—" "Use your core," Blake said, stepping behind him again. Jamie struggled, arms shaking. "I think my core's broken." Blake laughed softly, one hand steadying his back. "You're fine." Jamie grunted, hanging like a wet noodle. "This is not fine." Blake's other hand brushed against his waist as he helped lift him slightly, the contact warm and firm. "Now pull." Jamie tried again, and accidentally pressed back against Blake in the motion. They both froze. Blake's breath hitched. Jamie turned slightly, their faces inches apart. Jamie whispered, "This is close." Blake swallowed hard, forcing himself to step back. "You're done. That's enough for today." Jamie grinned, hopping off the bar. "What? Can't handle the heat?" Blake's cheeks were definitely a little pink. "You talk too much." Jamie smirked, wiping sweat from his neck. "Guess you'll have to make me quiet next time, coach." Blake ran a hand through his hair, muttering a curse, then said, "Let's go. You need water before you pass out." Jamie followed him, half laughing. "Admit it, you're blushing." "I'm not." "You totally are." Blake didn't answer, but the corner of his mouth twitched, and his ear stayed red all the way back to the dorm. By the time they got back to the dorm, Jamie was a mess, hair sticking to his forehead, shirt clinging to his skin, and his arms feeling like jelly. He threw himself onto his bed with a dramatic groan. "I think I'm dying." Blake was already pulling off his hoodie. "You lasted longer than I thought you would." Jamie peeked up. Wow, is that your way of saying you're proud of me? Blake smirked. Don't push it, Bunny. Jamie groaned again and sat up, fanning his face with his shirt. I need a shower before I melt. Blake nodded, grabbing his towel. Same. Jamie waved a lazy hand. Go ahead, I'll wait. Nah, you go first. You're the more sweaty one. Jamie made a noise of agreement and dragged himself into the bathroom, closing the door behind him. The shower was heaven. Steam filled the small space, hot water easing every sore muscle. Jamie leaned against the wall, eyes closed, sighing softly. Never again. Has a demon. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Blake started to wonder what was taking so long. He wasn't trying to pry, but Jamie had a bad habit of spacing out mid-task. And Blake had caught him leaving the stove on once before. So when he heard the faint sound of a thud and a muffled curse from the bathroom, instinct took over. Jamie? Blake called out, knocking on the door. No answer. Jamie, you good? Still silence, except the sound of running water. Blake frowned, then slowly opened the door a crack, just to make sure he hadn't passed out or something. Big mistake. The first thing he saw was Jamie, wet, with hair slicked back. Water sliding down his neck and shoulders. Blake froze mid-step, brain short-circuiting. Jamie blinked, using his arms as shield. Blake, what the hell are you doing? You didn't answer, Blake stammered, backing up so fast he hit the wall. You made a noise. I fought you. I dropped the shampoo, Jamie yelled, scrambling for a towel. Oh my God, okay, sorry. Blake's voice cracked halfway through as he turned, covering his face with one hand. Jamie groaned, wrapping the towel around his waist and stepping out to glare. You could have waited. I knocked. You barged in. Blake's face was bright red now. I thought you fell. Jamie crossed his arms. Yeah, fell into embarrassment. Thanks for the trauma. Blake tried not to look, but his gaze kept flicking to his now half-covered body before he caught himself. You're fine, totally fine. Jamie smirked slightly, realizing Blake's reaction. You're blushing again. I'm not. You so are. Jamie, put some clothes on before Blake stopped himself, running a hand down his face. Before I say something stupid. Jamie tilted his head, teasing. Like what? Like nothing, Blake muttered quickly, retreating to his bed like a man escaping a crime scene. Jamie laughed softly and turned back into the bathroom, deliberately slow. Relax, big guy. It's not like you haven't seen a guy shirtless before. Blake's voice came out rough. Not like that. Jamie froze, glancing back, but Blake was already looking away, pretending to scroll his phone. For some reason, Jamie's heart skipped. Later. When Blake finally took his turn in the shower, Jamie was lying on his bed, grinning to himself. A week later. Jamie had been waiting a whole week for this moment. After the gym humiliation, today was the perfect chance. Blake was sitting at his desk, headphones around his neck, scrolling through some playlists. Jamie, in his oversized crop hoodie and tiny shorts, leaned against the doorway with a smug little grin. Hey, muscle man, he said. Blake glanced up. What? Want to play a game with me? Blake raised an eyebrow. A game? Yeah, you tortured me at the gym. I think it's only fair I return the favor. Blake smirked faintly. What kind of game are we talking about? Jamie shrugged. You'll see, except he never actually got around to it. The second Jamie sat down at his gaming setup, a notification popped up. Ryan, you on? Jamie hesitated. He'd meant to make Blake play something chaotic and embarrassing. But Ryan had been waiting to team up all week. One game wouldn't hurt, right? He quickly typed, yeah, gimme 5 mins. Then he totally forgot about Blake. Half an hour later, Blake was still at his desk, glancing over every few minutes at the back of Jamie's head. Jamie was laughing through his mic, completely lost in the game. Ryan, you totally missed that shot. Shut up, I was lagging. Excuses. Blake's jaw tightened. He took off his headphones, stood up slowly, and walked toward Jamie. Jamie didn't even notice him until Blake's shadow fell over his monitor. Having fun? Blake asked, voice low. Jamie blinked, startled. Blake, yeah, just one match. Blake leaned down until his mouth was right beside Jamie's ear. You forgot about me. Jamie laughed nervously. What? No, I was just… Before he could finish, Blake slipped an arm around his waist and lifted him out of the chair like he weighed nothing. Blake. Shh. Blake sat down, pulling Jamie right onto his lap, his arm firmly around his waist. Jamie's headset mic was still on. Bro, what's going on over there? Ryan's voice echoed through the speakers. Jamie's eyes went wide. Oh my God, mute, mute. Blake grinned, chin resting on Janie's shoulder. No, keep it on. Blake! Maybe then he'll hear what happens when you forget me for another guy. Jamie's heart pounded. You're insane. Probably, Blake whispered, his breath hot against Jamie's neck. Now play. Jamie tried to focus, hands trembling on the keyboard, but Blake's chest pressed against his back, solid and warm. Every time Jamie leaned forward, Blake tugged him closer again. Ryan's voice crackled through the mic, oblivious. Jamie, you still there? Why are you breathing so weird? Jamie choked on a laugh. Just tired. Blake bit back a smirk. Tired, huh? You weren't tired when you were playing with him. Jamie hissed under his breath. Blake, stop. Blake's voice dropped. Quiet. You really think I'm letting you go that easy, bunny? Jamie froze. The sound of his low, possessive tone sent a shiver up his spine. Ryan's voice kept talking in the background, but Jamie wasn't hearing a word of it anymore. Blake's hand had slid up his thigh, steady but careful, never crossing too far, just enough to make Jamie's breath catch. Blake, Jamie whispered, he can still hear us. Good, Blake murmured. Maybe he'll get the hint. Jamie's pulse jumped. You're impossible. Blake said softly. Jamie turned his head just slightly, and Blake's eyes caught his. Everything else, the game, the mic, Ryan's voice, vanished. Blake's voice was barely audible. You drive me insane, Jamie. And before either of them could overthink it, Blake leaned forward and kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It was heat, frustration, and every unsaid word from the past week. Jamie gasped softly, hands fisting in Blake's hoodie, the mic still live somewhere in the background. When Blake finally pulled away, Jamie was flushed and breathless. Blake's lips ghosted near his ear. Now you remember me. Jamie swallowed hard, still dazed. Yeah. Blake smirked. Good. And somewhere on the other side of the mic, Ryan's confused voice broke the silence. Jamie, did you just moan? Jamie nearly fell off Blake's lap. Gotta go, he yelped, slamming the mic mute button as Blake burst out laughing behind him. Jamie shot him a glare, cheeks bright red. You're dead. The next morning, Jamie wished he could melt into the floor. He woke up late, Blake already dressed and sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone with that infuriatingly smug expression. Jamie groaned and dragged a pillow over his face. Please tell me that last night didn't happen. Blake's voice came out low and teasing. Which part? The game? The kiss? Or the part where you moaned in front of your gamer buddy? Jamie's pillow hit him square in the chest, cheeks burning. He definitely heard. I'll never be able to look at Ryan again. Blake's grin dropped a little. You really like him, huh? Jamie blinked, thrown off. What? You talk to him all the time. Jamie looked down at his hands. Yeah, well, he's easy to talk to, that's all. Blake's tone shifted. And I'm not? Jamie froze. That's not what I meant. Blake leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Then what do you mean, Jamie? Jamie opened his mouth, then closed it again. He didn't even know how to explain it to himself. Jamie sighed, rubbing his temples. Ryan's different. How? Jamie hesitated, then almost under his breath said, because Ryan's also an Omega. Blake froze. The room went quiet. What? Blake finally said, dumbfounded. He fully thought Ryan was an alpha. Jamie shrugged. We just bonded over being Omegas, I guess. Blake blinked. Oh, you could have told me. Jamie's eyes snapped up. Why would I tell you? You're my roommate, not my… He stopped himself, biting his lip. Not your what, bunny? Blake's voice dropped, slow and dangerous. Jamie swallowed. Not my alpha. The air between them went still. Blake stood, the weight of his presence filling the room. You sure about that? Jamie blinked up at him, heart hammering. What's that supposed to mean? Blake moved closer, step by step, until Jamie had to tilt his head back to look up at him. It means, Blake said quietly, you've been mine from the moment you sat on my lap, and you know it. Jamie's pulse jumped. Blake, you're being ridiculous. Maybe. But Blake crouched down in front of him, eyes dark and steady. Look me in the eyes and tell me you don't feel it. Jamie tried. He really did. But his heart betrayed him. He exhaled, barely a whisper. I can't. Blake's smile turned softer, gentler. Didn't think so. Jamie dropped his gaze, voice trembling. You're an idiot, Blake. Maybe, Blake murmured. But I'm your idiot. Jamie blinked up at him, torn between laughing and screaming. You're so full of yourself. Only when it comes to you. Blake reached out, brushing his thumb under Jamie's chin, lifting his face. You think I'd let some random Omega steal your attention and not go crazy? Jamie's lips parted, breath catching. You really are possessive. Blake smirked. Told you from day one. The tension stretched between them was thick. Then, without thinking, Jamie leaned forward and kissed him. It was softer this time, slower, more real, the kind of kiss that didn't need words. Blake's hand slid up to the back of Jamie's neck, pulling him closer, deepening the kiss until Jamie's fingers curled in his hoodie to steady himself. When they finally broke apart, Jamie was breathless, smiling despite himself. Blake rested his forehead against Jamie's. So what now? Jamie chuckled quietly. I guess I stopped pretending I don't like you. And I stopped pretending I'll ever let you go, Blake murmured. Jamie groaned playfully. You make everything sound like a threat, only when I mean it. Jamie laughed softly, curling against Blake's chest. You're impossible. Blake kissed the top of his head. And you're mine, Bunny. Jamie rolled his eyes, but didn't move away. We'll see. Yeah, Blake whispered. We will. And for the first time in weeks, Jamie didn't feel confused or scared. He just felt home. 3 months later, life in the dorms was surprisingly peaceful. Well, as peaceful as it could be when your possessive alpha boyfriend kept stealing your snacks. And occasionally, your sanity. Jamie sat cross-legged on his bed, controller in hand, headset slightly crooked. Ryan, stop camping in the corner, you coward. Ryan's laughter came through the mic. You still suck at this game. I do not. Yes, you do, Blake said from across the room, smirking as he watched Jamie from his desk. You panic every time someone aims at you. Jamie shot him a glare. Keep quiet, Alpha. Blake only smiled, standing up and walking over. What are you gonna do? Bite me? Jamie looked up at him through his lashes, smirking. Don't tempt me. Ryan groaned through the mic. Oh my God, you two are disgusting. Can you not flirt mid-match? Jamie giggled. Sorry, can't help it. Blake leaned over Jamie's shoulder, voice dropping just enough to make Ryan uncomfortable. You started it, Bunny. So disgusting, Ryan muttered. You know, some of us are single and trying to survive in this cold world. Maybe if you stopped cringe flirting with your teammates. You wouldn't be, Jamie teased. Ryan gasped dramatically. That was one time. Sure, Blake snorted, sitting down on the edge of the bed beside Jamie. You're both disasters. Jamie elbowed him playfully. Takes one to know one. Blake smirked and pressed a quick kiss to the side of his head. Yeah, but you're my disaster. Ryan made gagging noises through the headset. I'm muting you both. Jamie burst out laughing. You love us. Yeah, Ryan said. Just don't start making out mid-match again. I still have trauma from that one time. Jamie's face went red instantly. Ryan, Blake laughed so hard he nearly fell over. Still the best night of my life. Jamie groaned, burying his face in his hands. You're impossible. Blake leaned closer, whispering in his ear. You say that a lot, Bunny, because it's true. And yet, you're still here. Jamie looked up at him, smiling despite himself. Unfortunately, Blake chuckled and pulled him in, kissing his cheek. You love it. Jamie sighed dramatically. Yeah, maybe I do. Ryan's voice came through again, sing-song. Aw, my favorite couple's getting mushy again. Ew. A little while later, after the game ended, the dorm went quiet. Jamie was curled up against Blake's chest, half asleep, his scent filling his senses. Blake absent-mindedly ran his fingers through Jamie's hair, watching the faint rise and fall of his chest. You know? Blake murmured. I never thought I'd end up like this. Jamie mumbled sleepily. Like what? Happily obsessed with a brat. Jamie smiled without opening his eyes. You were obsessed the moment I stepped into the storm. Blake laughed quietly. Yeah, I guess I was. He pressed a soft kiss to Jamie's temple. You're still mine, Bunny. Jamie tilted his head up, just enough to meet his gaze. Always. But don't get too cocky about it. Too late, Blake teased. Jamie rolled his eyes, then leaned up to kiss him. If life stayed this good, Jamie figured he wouldn't mind sitting in Blake's lap a few more times. Just. Maybe not with the mic on, next time. The end.